Okay, let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about factors that affect how people vote. So in this slide, we looked at who is likely to vote, so who actually is motivated enough and has enough political efficacy to go out and cast a ballot. Now let's talk about what affects voting behavior. So first, let's look at geography. We've already mentioned the Solid South. This is the traditionally Democratic South, or how the South used to be traditionally Democratic, but increasingly is now Republican. And there's a couple of reasons for that. What you need to know is that most likely, if someone says they're from the South, that those states vote red, and so they are now more Republican, and they're more likely to vote Republican if you're talking to someone from those regions. That is not always the case. It's just a likelihood. The Great Plains tend to vote Republican. There's a Republican trend there, as well as the Rocky Mountain region. We've talked before. I mentioned about building on the L. I'll show you that map again. That's kind of that Rocky Mountain, Great Plains region, and then the South. That was a Republican strategy to get more electoral victories, especially at the presidential level. New England traditionally was Republican, but increasingly has become Democrat. The Great Lakes region, there's been a Democratic trend, but there also is some swing states there, like Ohio, for example, and a few other. The far west, so like the West Coast, has a Democratic trend also. So let me see if this is the visual I wanted to show you. Yeah, so this is a really great site, Voting America. This actually will go through and show you congressional elections and district winners for either Congress, Republican strength in congressional elections. There's like a ton of data you can look at. Let's see, are these the maps? Yeah, I want to look. So this one is really cool. It's an animated presidential map. So if you click on it, it'll go through and tell you, okay, at 1840, this is how where we were at, and it actually will play through 1844. It tells you right here the parties, and you'll actually be able to see a really cool how cool it is that the shifting politics throughout our nation's history. So you can see Solid South all through the late 1800s, and now we're entering the 1900s here. Still Solid South. Things are starting to change up a bit. Switch back. The 30s, that's FDR, right? This is all that was all FDR before. All right, and then after World War II, remember we're having the communist scare, so context matters. What's going on matters at the time. Nixon, Reagan, it's worth showing the whole thing, I think, so you can see. All right. Okay. The presence of an especially strong candidate can have an effect. There's also big effects like during a general election where you have the president running. If it's a really popular incumbent president, we see that coattail effect where other congressional members are going to try to like ride on the coattails of that popular president and have some electoral success because of the connection between them and that particular popular politician. So they will associate themselves if they think it will benefit them electorally. Time matters. So I just showed you that map, and that really relates to this next part. There's maintaining elections. So this is where the political alignment pretty much stays the same. 1960, 1964. You can go back and click on or look at that map and kind of see that. Then there's something called deviating elections, where there's like a temporary political change in the political alignment. And you can see that in like 1952 and 1956. And then there are these critical or these realigning elections. And these are the long-term changes in political alignment of the parties. So go back and look at the map, 1860, 1896, 1932. You're really going to be able to see it if you do that. Remember, it's the American Past Richmond maps. If you just Google that, you'll be able to get it. Midterm elections, we know that in midterm elections, the party in power, so the president's party, tends to lose seats in midterm elections, and that's happened pretty much in every midterm election year recently, except for 98 and I think 2002. Political party identification. Obviously, if you want to bet that you can guess someone's party ID and they say you can ask me one question, you want to go, are you a Democrat or a Republican? That is the strongest predictor of their voting behavior. Now, there used to be a lot of straight ticket voting, but we know that there's been increasing instances of split ticket voting, which causes that gridlock, and that there's rising de-alignment, meaning people are moving away from both parties and declaring themselves as independents. And like a third of Americans are starting to identify as Democrats. As independents. And remember, they are leaners. Like they might be independent and lean Democrat, independent, lean Republican. Independents tend to be young, college educated, and have above average incomes, just to let you know their demographic characteristics. So as we're talking about demographics, let's talk about the demographic characteristics that indicate voter turnout and voting behavior. So if we're looking at gender or sex, males are more likely than females to vote Republican. Remember, this is the gender gap. Females are more likely to vote for Democratic candidates. When it comes to race or ethnicity, white people are more likely to vote for Republicans than non-white people. And then African Americans are the strongest concentration of voters for the Democratic Party. The most loyal Democrats, that's a better way to say it. In terms of social class, the lower your social class is, the more likely you are to vote for a Democrat. The higher, the more likely you are to vote for a Republican. When it comes to religion, we did talk about this a bit already. Protestants are more likely to vote Republican. Catholics traditionally are more likely to vote for Democrat, but Bush 43 got the Catholic vote. Obama, right after, got the Catholic vote. So you can see they tend to be Democratic voters, but that can change or vary based on the candidate. Jewish people are more likely to vote for Democrats. So, that is something that I think most of you guys have already kind of saw. If you go back and you look at that ideology quiz that we took, I think now it makes it a little bit easier to do that or to assess what was happening. It's really important to understand what retrospective voting is and prospective voting. Retrospective voting is looking back, right? In retrospect, it's like, what have you done for me in the past? And that is what informs voting behavior. Prospective voting is like, what are you going to do for me in the future? And then that can affect their voting behavior. If things are really good and you've done well under the current administration, the retrospective voting, you're going to probably continue and vote the same way. If things are really bad, you're looking to the future, you want to make a change, you might change up who you're supporting. And then obviously, candidate appeal is really big, right? If you have someone that is just really charismatic, it's going to get people out and get them voting. And that can happen across party lines. You saw Obama got a lot of support from independents and even from some Republicans just because of his character. There are some funny statistics at the bottom. I'm not going to read them out to you about the 2000 election. Funny, not funny, I don't know. Maybe sad. Okay. This is going to be the end of video 3. I'm going to do I'm going to do one more video for right now on elections, and then that's all you have for now. Thanks, guys. That's not what I wanted to do.